What are some useless scary facts? Lake Superior has dead bodies from the 1920s. With freezing temperatures and a lack of oxygen, bodies don't decompose at the rate they would under normal conditions. Sure, they don't look as fresh as the day they died, in fact they're covered in bodily fat from saponification, but they can be recognized as human remains. In fact, there's been this ongoing debate because of the ship SS Edmund Fitzgerald that sank in the 70s. Because scuba divers wanted to explore it, but the families of the deceased were upset because this is basically a mass grave. There's a YouTube channel called Ask a Mortician that just did an episode on this, and I really recommend it. She goes a lot more in depth about the facts, and even went out there to talk with a surviving Fitzgerald relative. Not exactly useless, but there have been quite a few men who have died at the Grand Canyon because they thought it would be cool to take piss over a ledge, only to lose their balance. By you winning the lottery, you increase your chances of being murdered by a family member or any other person close to you. I've also heard that winning the lottery increases your chance of being the victim of any violent crime, home invasion, theft, and becoming bankrupt. If you're murdered, there's a very high chance you knew your killer. I'll keep that in mind next time I get murdered. A church in the Czech Republic known as the Sedlec Ossuary or Church of Bones has decoration of skulls and other human bones. It is known for this church to hold remains of up to 40,000 humans. For housing the remains of 40,000 humans, the entire church is about the size of a one-bedroom house. You can have a heart attack and die at any second because of a heart problem you never knew about. There's one called Brugada syndrome which has no physical evidence, and most people aren't diagnosed with it until they drop down dead, and testing is done on immediate family members. It's genetic, and one of them is diagnosed with it. Happened to my father. We found out because I'm the one tested who has it. My uncle and brother got the all clear. Chances are my granddad has it too for heart attacks since he was in his mid-40s. This happened to a guy I graduated high school with. He was 23 at the time. Nobody could believe it, and there wasn't a clear reason why until after the autopsy. When people are crucified, they rarely die from bleeding out. Instead, they die from asphyxiation or suffocation. The way their bodies are hung makes it almost impossible to breathe unless they physically hold themselves up instead of just hanging there. And after some many hours it gets to be too much, resulting in oxygen deprivation, unconsciousness, and death. Those good old Romans really knew how to make death horrible. Your body produces a cancerous cell about once every 30 minutes. Your immune system is usually very efficient at finding and immediately neutralizing them. But it's very possible that 30 minutes from now will be the time your immune system slips up and allows it to reproduce. I missed 30 seconds ago when I never knew this. Now I'm going to be counting seconds. Bedbugs can survive for up to a year without feeding under the correct temperatures. As adults, the females can lay 300 eggs in their lifetimes. You could be spending thousands of dollars and eventually just get infested again. And bedbugs are making a comeback after almost being eradicated. Probably walking around all smug like. Pooping can kill you because of a major nerve that is involved in the heart, the vagus nerve. Usually it just causes fainting. In my case it just makes me nauseous. Your kitchen sink has more bacteria per square inch than your toilet seat. I never really understood why toilet seats are supposed to be dirty. You put the back of your legs on them, not your asshole. An aneurysm can happen at any time to anyone for any reason. For any reason. Like if someone looks at me funny. Yep. That one day the planet Mercury will get eaten by the Sunday, but in the 1% chance it actually flings out of orbit. It's useless to us because we won't be around. It could potentially, mind you, it's a low chance for this to happen, hit Venus or maybe even Earth and send flying particles all over the system. The reason why it would get thrown out is because Jupiter is actually tugging on it and making its orbit more elliptical and may eventually get thrown out entirely. Yeet. Duck you guys. I'm out. There have been 32 reported broken arrow incidents in the USA since 1950, many more in former Soviet countries and other nuclear powers. A broken arrow incident is basically an accident where they lost a nuclear weapon. Apparently losing a weapon is called an empty quiver incident. One memorable broken arrow incident occurred over Spain. In the 50s, I believe, there was a program where nuclear weapons were being flown around the world all of the time so that the US could deploy them in case of attack. Well, a mechanical error on that plane allowed 3 nuclear bombs to be dropped, and they fell onto Spain. None of them went off despite their drop. 2 of them were very easily found, although one of them leaked enough radiation to make a mile in every direction from the crash site uninhabitable. However, the third was missing for weeks, until a fisherman said that he saw a bomb fall into the ocean. Yep, it was our third bomb. However, it was in a terrible place, literally on the edge of a giant chasm, where the tech of the day would not be able to reach. So they went on a mission to get this unexploded ducking nuclear bomb off of this. Except they knocked it off only for some parachute netting material to catch on a outcropping. Obviously grabbing the bomb didn't work, so they grabbed the shitties, was tangled up in hoping the bomb wouldn't slip out of it, and the apparatus they were using to grab all this shit didn't fail, and dragged everything up to the surface without further problems. Luckily, the program of flying around with nuclear bombs was discontinued shortly after this. Too long didn't read that time the USA dropped nuclear bombs on Spain. Big fin squids link. Also, 95% of the ocean hasn't been properly explored, so who knows what could be down there. One of my cool internet moments last year was finding this video link of the first recording of a living sinuous Asperotoothes mangold squid. The Nautilus crew had just filmed it, not knowing what it was, only to find out later, and they just posted it on YouTube for the rest of the world to see. We live in a really cool time, technologically speaking. According to some research, a human head may remain conscious for up to 30 seconds after decapitation. Most notably, a man named Dr. Bo Rooks did a series of experiments in the early 1900s where he yelled at recently decapitated criminals' heads and saw a response. I love this. I love early science experiments. Totally unethical and not particularly scientific. But we can't prove them wrong, because it would be unethical to attempt to do so. Also, the thought of some poor bloke who's clearly not having the best day. He's just been decapitated, and now someone is yelling at him. I'd be really annoyed at that. When someone dies, the last thing the dying person senses is the sense of hearing, then touch, smell, and taste. The first sense that is usually gone is sight. I'm curious to know how that was discovered. I'm guessing someone ran tests scanning the brain of a terminal patient or something, saw what was still functioning and what was let go. Just a guess. You've probably walked past a murderer. Thank you for telling me your personal stories, they were really interesting to read. I've gotten kissed by a murderer as a baby. You know nobody fully. You only see the sides they choose to show you. The only person you really, truly know is you. And even then, there's your subconscious. It's actually an observation of the Japanese people written by a Jesuit missionary. The Japanese people are so crafty in their hearts that nobody can understand them. Whence it is said that they have 3 hearts, a false one in their mouths for all the world to see, another within their breasts only for their friends, and the third in the depths of their hearts, reserved for themselves alone, and never manifested to anybody. From Historia da Igreja do Japão Vol IPG 173. Written by Father João Rodrigues. Society of Jesus. Chiropractors kill more people per year than sharks. My ex has been going to a chiropractor recently. Tell me more of your joyful chiropractor fun facts. I don't have many more, but vending machines kill half as many people per year as sharks. There is a theory in quantum cosmology. It is the hypothesis that our universe is actually a false vacuum, meaning that it isn't in its most stable possible configuration. Think of a ball rolling on a surface having several local minima dents in the surface, but there is only one global minima, the dent which is the deepest. The ball may be in one of the dents which is not the deepest one, so it is stable for now. But given the chance, it will slide to the deepest dent, which is the lowest energy configuration possible, the so-called true vacuum. Now the interesting part. If our universe is, indeed, in a false vacuum. Due to something called quantum tunneling, it may tunnel into the true vacuum, creating a bubble of lower energy. Once this lower energy bubble is formed, it expands, engulfing the entire universe, destroying everything we know as is, and creating new laws of physics. The speed of expanding is the speed of light, so we would have no information whatsoever about it before it hits us. We will literally never see it coming. The really scary and really useless part, there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. So this is what physicists tell us scary stories around the campfire. It is currently believed that all quantum fields in the universe have reached their vacuum state, but we are not actually sure about the Higgs boson field. If the Higgs boson is actually in a false vacuum, then at any time, that field might collapse. To the layman, that event would lead to three things. All laws of chemistry are changed or undone. The standard model of physics is wrong. A sphere of expanding energy centered on the source of the collapse would radiate throughout the universe, destroying all matter in its way, into infinity. All because one quantum field might not be at its lowest energy level, like we think it should be. I still don't understand that enough to be afraid of it. The Andromeda Galaxy getting closer at 430,000 km/h, but it will hit the Milky Way in 4 billion years, and anyway, the stars are so distant from each other that just a few of them will be destroyed. Dogs love squeaky toys cause it reminds them of a dying prey animal. Edit for more information. The squeaks activate a predatory instinct in them, and that's why they ruthlessly attack them. Scientists don't know what matter is like inside neutron stars, but some theorize it's a kind of strange matter that, if it exists, may turn everything it touches into strange matter. If two neutron stars collide, which does happen, microscopic strange matter particles could fly through space until they eventually reach Earth, at which point the planet and everything on it would turn into strange matter and be destroyed. Someone you love will probably get dementia, and it will ducking suck. The human brain is a machine, and like any machine it inevitably breaks down. Imagine a person you love. Imagine their mind starts dying before their body. They cease to be the person you knew. A little bit at a time. They lose their memories, the cherished and the mundane. Then they start looking at their loved ones in terror, because nothing makes sense and everyone seems like a stranger. It's nature at its most cruel. Duck dementia. Some of your friends might just pretend to like you because you are useful to them, and you don't realize it because they are just great at hiding it. You okay, dude? Whenever you walk near a mountain, there is a small chance that a falling boulder instantly crushes you to death. A good portion of spiders shed their exoskeletons occasionally, so when you happen to come across a dead spider, there's a good chance that it's just an empty husk, and there is another, slightly bigger spider nearby. Years ago I saw an episode of Monsters Inside Me where this guy was doing something outside, and a fly flew into his eye. It only made contact for about a microsecond, but it was enough time for it to lay eggs. After they hatched they started eating his eye from the inside, and he was starting to go blind until a doctor figured out what was wrong. Ever since then I get super paranoid whenever a fly goes anywhere near my face, because of the scary fact that something like this could possibly happen to me. Okay. Thank you. I hate you now. I have always been paranoid about my eyes as it is, but this takes the cake. Building my permanent residence bomb shelter now. Chances of experiencing terrorism are crazy low, but a friend of mine called in sick to work on the 22nd of March 2016. He works in Zaventem Brussels airport at the desk next to the American Airlines one. Terrorist blew himself up there that day. Friend would have been there if not for a mild stomach flu. He was investigated afterwards in case his absence meant he knew something was going to happen. I have two friends who worked in the Twin Towers in 2001 and both weren't there on 9/11 because of random occurrences. One overslept causing them to run late and the other had a sick child she needed to take to the doctor. It's strange how what can feel like a hectic or bad morning is actually better than the alternative. There are some parts of the universe that we'll never, ever be able to see. No matter what we do, they'll always remain just out of reach. Edit, I never had this much upvotes. Thanks to everyone. That's why we call the part we can see the observable universe. For those that don't know, this happens because the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light. There is a guy in the world who died from the most minor injury, and somehow, this half-bothered comment is the one that turns out to have thousands of upvotes. I've read about cases where a stubbed toe caused death. There are a bunch of rare diseases and disorders, like Alport syndrome, Bloom syndrome, Riley-Day syndrome and Tay-Sachs disease, that almost exclusively occur in Ashkenazi Jews. My sister and I both have Alport's renal failure hearing loss, even though our parents don't. After the Holocaust, since so many of us were killed, these diseases have become increasingly common in the Ashkenazi Jewish population. I don't know how useless this is, but you are never 100% safe. Think about it. No matter what scenario you put yourself in, there will always be some sort of countermeasure. Let's say you built a concrete room that is 10 inches wide with no doors and windows underground. An earthquake could happen. A sinkhole could open up. A ravine could open up, etc. No matter how safe a situation sounds, it can never be 100% safe. Edit however, it is good at making people paranoid though. Alive humans burn rather easily in a low heat fire. The hair and skin go first. Then eyeballs will easily boil, burst, then explode, and the scary thing is, if you've got a high pain threshold you'll feel the whole process as your insides boil and explode, and skin slips off the bone, while you scream your way to death. As the voicer barks is heavily protected. If it's a low heat fire the human was caught in, then all that's left behind is a carbonized skeleton with tissue fibers still attached. High heat fire and all that's left is ashes. Human assholes can stretch out to 7 inches without tearing, and a raccoon can fit in a hole as tight as 4 inches. You're welcome. I wonder what kind and how many experiments they performed before they realized 7 inches was the limit before it would tear. Just because you're dead doesn't mean you immediately stop perceiving stimulations around you. It takes a bit for your brain to die of oxygen deprivation and shut down. So there's a good chance that when you die, that you're trapped in your body realizing you're dead with no way to stop it. This fact has been semi-confirmed by people who experience temporary death in hospitals and recall nurses and doctors rushing around them trying to revive them. I'm not sure I believe this. It's contradictory that most people will be unaware of their surroundings when they lose consciousness, but they don't die. But this suggests when people die they stay conscious before actually dying. Maybe there are some people who have never lost consciousness and have good blood flow to the brain if the heart stops, but they are probably in a very small minority. The notorious serial killer, cannibal, and sex fiend Jeffrey Dahmer, who killed at least 17 young men and boys, was likely driven to his homicidal urges after suffering brain damage due to a lack of oxygen during a relatively routine surgery to repair a hernia at the age of 4. Pretty much everyone who knew him said he was a happy and outgoing child until that surgery, and then he became emotionally subdued and distant. Many serial killers and mass shooters and violent repeat offenders in general have a history of brain damage or head injury, suggesting possible brain damage. Alright, I collected some of my favorite scary facts from an app I really like called Thunder Dungeon. They have all types of memes and facts and stuff, so it was all written in pictures. I had to manually write them down. 1. There's an episode of Sesame Street that had to be pulled off the air in 76 feet cause it was so scary. Parents complained their children are screaming in horror at the TV. 2. There's a disease nicknamed Ondine's Curse, which causes sufferers to die if they fall asleep. 3. On August 26, 1968, every TV in America shut down for 25 seconds. There was a murmuring sound coming from the TV and people reported hearing a demon. 4. In 1994 a man was arrested for dressing as the Grim Reaper and standing outside old people's homes. 5. It only takes about 7 pounds of pressure to rip off an ear. 6. There is an island in Italy that is supposedly so haunted that the government forbids the public from visiting it. 7. There's a syndrome called Charles Bonnet syndrome that have been called a window into a parallel universe. People who has it are prone to seeing bright lights, weird shapes and scary faces. The thing about this syndrome is that all those who suffer from it are almost exclusively blind or vision impaired. 8. When a bear attacks you, He will most likely start eating you alive rather than killing you first. 9. At any possible moment, Earth could be hit by a gamma ray burst which will extinguish most, if not all, life on the planet. 10. A woman in street. Louis was watching a TV documentary about a serial killer who tortured and killed women when she realized she was living in his former apartment. 11. There's a caterpillar so poisonous, just brushing your finger onto it can cause internal bleeding in your brain. 12. In 1942, a man known as the Phantom Barber would break into people's house while they were sleeping to steal a lock from their hair. He was never identified. 13. There's a fish called a stonefish. It's so venomous that if you step on it, you could die in 20 minutes. 14. According to a recent study, 1 in 5 CEOs demonstrated psychopathic traits. Another population with similar proportions of psychopaths is the prison population. 15. There was a guy from New York who owned a car with the license plate 5V1732. He died on May 17th, 1932. That's all, folks. Edit fact number 3. The time of the shutdown was 25 seconds, not minutes.